Yes. Hello, good evening, and welcome to Red Corner Boxing. My name is Mr. Neutral, and this is Riyadh season, a different angle special for Reuters and Red Corner Boxing. This program is sponsored by EasyStorage.com for all your local and nationwide needs. Give them a wee look in the bio. To help you out if you need that. Right, introduce my guests. Welcome Ra from Punch Out Boxing, looking absolutely fantabulous. And Brett, the boxing man, who will be back in shortly. We will be having 20 boxing as well, who will join us. And just to give you a recap from episode 1, guys, we were talking about the birth of Riyadh season as we know it, Saudi Vision 2030 as envisioned by the king or the prince, I should say, the crown prince. What's his nickname? Is it
MBS? I think
MBS. That's it. Yeah. So MBS, is affectionately known in the boxing world, and he had this vision. So I'm just giving the recap, guys, of the first episode, how it all got started, and give you an outline of this episode. And it's the development of Riyadh season from 2018 to 2024 up to last year. The next week's program will be about Riyadh season's grip on boxing and how they're marketing Riyadh season. So for this episode, we now focus on the period 2019 to 2024 and the development of Riyadh season under the leadership of Turki Al Sheikh on behalf of the ruling royal family of Saudi Arabia and their 2030 vision of Vision 2030, as they call it. And it was a bit of a spectacular success in 2018 with the Groves Callum Smith fight that they had in Jeddah. So they decided to host the heavyweight rematch between Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz, which was to be held in Riyadh. But the large-scale event of Riyadh season, this boxing was just the very, very minuscule part of Riyadh season as a whole, because Riyadh season, and Ra will tell you, this is it's a festival running from March to October, and it applies to all of Saudi Arabia and their tourism ambitions. So they only held boxing matches in this period up until 2020. Up until 2024, right? So all of this cultural realignment of their money, not to be dependent on oil, we now concentrate on this Riyadh season and how it was born. So we all saw in episode 1, Brett, a very good friend over at the Boxing Man, revealed that Turkey's first taste in boxing in country was the Grove Smith fight, and the winner of the Muhammad Ali Super 6 Series champion. And that was held at the 10,000 Arena King Abdullah Sports City Complex in Jeddah in 28th of September 2018. And this was the catalyst in Turkey's vision in mind and how he was incorporating boxing into Riyadh season itself. And he was, he started on a bit of a roll. And as a whole, obviously 2020, 2021, COVID-19 came in, absolutely destroyed not only the boxing plans for those 2 years, but also Saudi Vision itself. It had a 14-year target to get it all done, and they're already 2 years behind. So when finally the restriction eased, the opening ceremony to get things rolling again was a Pitbull concert, and 750,000 visitors in that year to the festival. Turki Al Sheikh took advantage of the Russia-Ukraine war to offer the hosting of the rematch. Originally, that was planned in Ukraine for Usyk and Joshua. Because Usyk had won that first fight at the Tottenham Hotspur, he was then supposed to be having his homecoming in Ukraine, but obviously Russia put paid to that. So Eddie Hearn steered the fight towards Turki Al-Sheikh, and Hearn, however, he wasn't sure after the Russia fight that he could pull it off, but he did, and they announced on in June the 19th of 2022 that the fight would be for undisputed, and also for the recently vacated Ring magazine title. So on August the 20th they met, and the country put up $77 million fight purse between the two through its sovereign wealth fund, or what is known as the Public Investment Fund, and then it was roughly to the tune of $700 billion strong. So they delved into that for the first defense of Usyk, in remarking, and the highlight of the event, Prince Abdulaziz bin Turki Al Faisal, who also heads the Saudi Olympic and Paralympic Committee, said that this event was the source of pride to Saudi Arabia, and it was the catalyst of what we know as Riyadh season, and officially launched in 2024. 2023, and the breakdown of talks between Usyk and Fury frustrated Turkey, who had planned us undisputed for 2 dates in that year, only for it not to happen. Instead, Fury picked Francis Ngannou for a crossover super fight that was held in Riyadh October 28, 2023, under the British Boxing Board of Control. Right, gentlemen, let's get back to you guys. We lost Brett. That's unfortunate. Hopefully he'll come back. I'll come to you first, Ra. The development from 2018, that first fight, do you feel that when Eddie Hearn was first approached, he thought, I need help here? And was it Eddie Hearn that, for you, that persuaded Turki Al-Sheikh to work with Queensberry to make this, or, was it Turki Al-Sheikh forced the two together because he knew that combination would sell well for him in Saudi Arabia?
No, I don't think Eddie would have pushed for that at all. I vaguely, if I'm correct, I recall him saying things about how he's the only guy who's able to make these big Middle Eastern fights come off. I think that the transition actually to Riyadh season dominating the big boxing events in the kingdom, there may well have been some underlying internal power struggle, because you might recall those first few big events, the World Boxing Super Series, Anthony Joshua's 2 rematches.
Yeah,
they were actually done under the auspices of the now defunct Skills Challenge group,
yes,
which were headed by Prince Khalid. This is purely speculation on people like my part, but Prince Khalid, he's from a different faction of the Saudi royal family to Mohammed bin Salman. So it seems that at some point he was relieved of his duties, and boxing then came under the auspices of Riyadh season, which, of course, Turki Al-Sheikh is in charge of as head of the GEA. So there might have been some internal politics going on there. I'm inclined to think actually Turki Al-Sheikh was the driver behind it, because he wanted to bring Fury on board, probably with a view to making that undisputed heavyweight title fight, and maybe eventually hoping to make what would have been the biggest money spinner in the sport, that is AJ versus Fury. So I actually don't think that Eddie would have had a hand in that at all. I wouldn't be surprised if Frank Warren, being a wily old veteran of this sport, whether he opened channels through the back to Turki Al-Sheikh in that regards, and made it clear that, well, you want that, if you want to put on that biggest of all fights at heavyweight, you got to come see me, because I'm the man who holds the purse strings for Tyson Fury. So no, I think I'm sure he would never admit it, but I think Eddie Hearn would have been quite annoyed that, having been the promoter that made the breakthrough into that lucrative Gulf market, he then got elbowed somewhat, at least sidewards, if not out of the picture. And we've seen since then, of course, Frank has quietly maneuvered himself into almost dominating the lucrative heavyweight division, with just that one almighty obstacle in Usyk standing in his way for complete control.
Yeah, thank you, Rod. Very well put. 20, I'll come to you next, mate. Thank you for joining us tonight. Do you agree with Ra? Did Turki Al-Sheikh identify the heavyweight division, and in particular Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with everything Ra says. That was his. I think that was his vision all along, was the heavyweights, and I think that's where Frank Warren come in and said, I've got these heavyweights coming up. I've got a few on the books that are going to do the business. So I think that's what got Frank in there as well. And I think the added bonus was that the rivalry between Frank and Eddie, like Turkey played on that, and then bringing them together made such a big news story. And then doing the 5 versus 5 as well, it just it really boosted the Turkey story and the plan forward with bringing them together, because it was such a big thing at the time, having these two promoters that like really had never spoke to each other. Everyone said a lot of these fights are not happening because the promoters won't speak to each other. So I think Turkey really seen a spot there where he could use that to his advantage and create what he's created with the heavyweights. And now with Frank Warren sort of taking over with the heavyweights, he's becoming sort of the main man now with Turkey. And I don't think Eddie likes it too much, but that's just the way it is.
Thanks, mate. Brett, welcome. The boxing man from Nelson, British Columbia in Canada. I haven't forgot that, mate. Once you told me, I was like, that's fascinating. Obviously you've had the two guys, answer the question about, but is it more a case of Turkey convincing these two sworn enemies, reaching back to Eddie's father, even back in the 90s? Was that a remedy for British boxing or a hindrance, considering the amount of headliners that have been taken away from England?
So the first part of the question, are you referring to him bringing them two back together, and then
yes,
then as Turkey had an impact on the fact that he's took all these bigger events away? I think that it's almost, I think Ross said, it's a very clever move from Frank. Once these big money fights started, he started getting his checkbook out again. Because if you think about it, for many years, Frank was just kind of small halls for a bit. He wasn't doing massive shows. And I would imagine that the finances start. He's never going to be skint, is he? But I would imagine the finances start to, as soon as Eddie broke into that market and he saw it, he was extremely clever by going and then starting purchasing big talent. And then what's happened is Turkey's seen it and gone, I'm going to bring you two together. I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm going to make you loads and loads of money, and I'm going to make these fights. Now, at the end of the day, you say the word loads of money to any promoter in the world, and they're going to say, where do I sign? So as much as the story's better than the reality, because he's thrown a load of cash at them. So they're going to be tending to have Christmas dinner together. They're going to be, going for a glass of wine together. They're going to do all that thing that we want them to see, this big romance now that they're best mates again. But, at the end of the day, it's actually proven that the forces behind the scenes, like obviously the Warren brothers, what they've actually done. If you listen to Eddie, it's more a case of Frank's just the face, but he's not actually doing the work anymore. So it was an easy job for Turkey because he threw a load of cash at him. Going back to now, we've got these amazing events, of which I feel anyway, moving away from the UK. Yeah, it does take a bit of the way of the glitz and glamour. We spoke about it on the show last week about the dull atmosphere in and around the stadium, and the excitement's going a little bit. But this is probably going to be one of your questions at some point. What do we want? Do we want the fights, and do we want to see them? Or do we want to kick our heels and say, well, they need to be in the UK? You know, I'm torn. If it was ever to be made, where do I want Joshua Fury? Wembley Stadium, of course. But if you tell me it's never going to get made unless it's in Saudi Arabia, I'll bite your hand off to see it in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, absolutely. And it leads fascinatingly into my next point about the atmosphere and the crowds. And United States fans, I'm actually seeing now, right, going through what us British fans went through sort of maybe 2 years before that, is in seeing all these headline acts or bouts that that used to in Vegas and New York, etc., are now going to Riyadh season over in Saudi Arabia, and boy, they're not happy, and when obviously Turkey Al Sheikh made that first venture, was it into California where they made the first card? There's about 8 hours long, ridiculously long card, and there's a big
Zerdo, Bilham Smith, was it?
No, I think it was
no.
Crawford against Madrimov.
Yes,
Crawford Madrimov. Oh my goodness! Now he obviously went all in. Great, spent a load of cash on outside acts and entertainment. 8 to 10 hour special. Long ass wait between fights. We all know that. But it bombed. Is that a reflection on the market forces that he failed to identify in America, or was it just purely a fan backlash against Turkey Al Sheikh and GEA because it's an outside, power broker coming in? And you said that last week, Ra. That power broker status. There's never been another man like this, or another entity that has stepped it up into boxing in the manner in which this man does. So I'll come to you first, Ra.
No, I don't think it was a backlash on the part of the fans. I think it was a mistake on Turkey Al Sheikh's understanding of the US market, which is understandable. Entering this industry, this most volatile of sports, you're going to make mistakes. I think too much is actually made of it in that sense, in terms of how most of his shows are probably losing money. Because believe you me, this entire industry is basically based on a perpetual loss. Yeah, I mean, any of you who know, if you follow like it from the grassroots level, you will know small hall promoters, they're doing the same thing as Turkey Al Sheikh, i.e. losing money on every show. It's just not billions, but a lot of them, they have, they have businesses or lucrative jobs away from boxing, and they have to subsidize their own shows out of love for it. Now, the big promoters, I'm guessing they have their business model, which means over a period they will make a profit for their business to keep running. But what it means is that at any given time, I think a significant percentage of fighters and shows will lose money, but the handful of superstars that they may eventually develop or pick up will subsidize the rest of their stable. And people like Eddie Hearn has alluded to that recently. He was talking about Richardson Hitchens, who when he said I'm a free agent, Eddie said, I'll put you on a couple of headline shows and lost a lot of money on you. That's not unusual. It's just that with Turkey, the scale of it is way higher, but then I'm pretty sure his income outside of boxing is commensurately a lot higher as well. So no, that was natural that he's going to make mistakes, and the fact that some of the shows, he's trying different things, he's testing the market.
Rod, do you think he might have got it wrong, mate, on the fact that he saw that Triller tried to come in and do all these off-spin show type things? So he thought, well, that's what the American market wants, so I'll come in and do that. Do you think that might have been the basis of why he tried to put these artists on?
Yeah, I think you're right. Again, though, it's hard to say. I think if you look at, he seems to have this recent trend of associating the shows with video games.
Yeah.
Presumably, that's happening in the youth market. But then he's also bringing up these retro games, which guys like me and Neutral, who are closer in age to Turkey LLC, might remember. But do these 20-year-olds who follow Jake Paul and KSI, do they know what those games are about? I don't know. I'm out of touch with the youth culture, but he's trying those things. Mistakes have been made. It depends how much money his purse string holders are willing to lose before he understands the market to start getting a steady return. That's the big question as to his staying power in this industry.
Great stuff. 20, what do you think?
Yeah, you can't fault him for trying different things to get different markets in, like you say, the video games, bringing the live artists in and stuff of different generations, maybe hoping that that's going to bring different people into the boxing world. But the problem is it ruins it for the boxing purists who just don't want to see that stuff between the fights. We just want to. So it's sort of, you can look at it from one way that it was a good thing what he was trying to do and bring different eyeballs onto it. But then at the same time, he was putting a lot of people off by saying, I can't be bothered watching all these shows. I mean, I was one of them that if this carries on, I'll just watch the fights the next day, or I'll just keep flicking over from Coronation Street or something, and see when the fight starts, But you can't fault him for trying different things. And the thing is how much money has he lost over these years now trying these new things, because, he's getting some of the top people in to create these video games and to create these different, things for the fights. It's costing a lot of money. It's like, so bringing these artists in and stuff, he's paying them top dollar like he is with the fighters. He's paying them top dollar. Like, I'm a big believer as well that a lot of these fights would have happened without him. They just wouldn't have had the same purses. But if you didn't know you was going to get paid 10 million for the fight, would you get paid $1 million for the fight and take it? Probably, because you didn't know. The problem is now are these fighters going to fight for any less? They're all going to want the top money, and it's just going to cost him more money. And people are going to see this and go, well, if you want me on that card, he's getting paid this much. I want to get paid that much. And now I feel like he's sort of dropping down the fighters a little bit, on about Miller and stuff. Maybe fighters that he can pay a little bit less money to, and then is that going to start affecting the quality of the cards? Are people going to be like, the main fight's amazing, but it's getting like boxing used to be, where the undercard is not so great. So,
thanks, mate. Brett,
I wonder also,
sorry, mate, on you.
So I was just going to say, do you think we've really got that many of the fights we really wanted to see? I would say, apart from the 2 undisputed fights, that is at heavyweight and light heavyweight. Yeah, there's been some great fights there, but when you're talking about the handful of fights that all fans are saying, we really want to see this fight, I'd say it's only them 2. And in fact, some of his matchmaking is actually, I would say, hindering us from getting some of the fights we do want, because some of them, the matchmaking seems to be based on his whims. But yeah, that's my opinion.
Especially with the fillers like the Ngannou, Fury fighting him, Joshua fight. Like, they're sort of like fillers, aren't they? When realistically, they're not the fights we was wanting,
Exactly.
But again, I think he's doing that to try and bring another audience in. It's like he's sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place, I feel.
Thank you, mate. Thank you, Brett. talk to me about New York, going off the back of what the two gentlemen have said there, and trying to please too many people at the same time. Do you think he's learned massive lessons after New York now, and especially after the way he's been talking on the timeline with various restrictions, shall we say?
Yeah. Yeah, just to back it up slightly, you know, it's his money, and he's going back to some of the points because they were great points. It's his money, and he's tried his best to make it Hollywood. He's tried all these type of things, and he's got all this money. He's like, will that fix? Will that split? That I remember the first promo, Joshua Wallin, and like I was like, what am I watching here? Like, can this turn into a movie at some point? Because I'm having it. Like I'm enjoying it. And he's doing all these things. He's trying all these things, and he's making a lot of mistakes on the way. But you know, you've also got to. I'm sure at some point we'll debate and we'll have a good old chinwag and get stuck into each other a little bit. But like, if you think about that, Beterbiev and Bivol card 2, when you went down the fights, you were just like, how have we got all this in one night? Like.
Yeah, massive.
But mate, just revisit that in your brain. That card going down, going wow, and then the starting fight was Smith and Boasi. Come on, like it's just like it's just insane. Like if he gets it right like that, but I think Ross said it, 20s said it. Like the money's going to dry. It's got to dry up at some point. I don't know how much, but the commercial value, like, but to put a card on like that was just insane. So he's got some things right as well. And I think he has listened to the feedback because I've done it with you, Mr. Neutral. Like we'll be doing a watch along on one of his cars, and I'll be like, just a minute, I'm just going to go get a drink, and you'll be like, mate, they're coming in the ring. So it's almost gone the other way now, where it's like back to back from all this stop start. It's gone back to back. Like so, us fight fans, we can't even just nip to the bathroom and back again because now the ring walks are starting. But in terms of that's my opinion on that. In terms of we've all got a bit of a bad taste in our mouth about the New York Times Square card. I mean, on paper, how are we not all excited by that one on paper? It's the fighters that let him down that night, surely. We can't. He's tried this crazy thing of shutting down Times Square, and again, the idea about shutting down or not shutting down or going to Alcatraz. He's in his mind. He's sitting. What crazy thing can I do now that's going to be like, Thriller and Melilla-esque, you know what I mean? Like he's just thinking of all these crazy things that he can do, that he can say, remember that event that I put on? So he's got all these top class fighters that absolutely let him down. So I don't agree with his posts recently about, if you don't come forward, you don't fight for me, because there's a lot of fighters out there with the sweet science that have still entertained us over the years. But obviously, what was put on that day was just not that way. And I think I'm going to give him a pass. The idea was great. The fighters let him down on that.
Absolutely.
I don't think he helped himself though as well with not letting the fans in.
The fight because
the way they created it. Yeah, and then what happened was the fans then had a way to sort of get it in. Even though I do agree, it was the fighters on the night. They're the ones in the ring. They're the ones we're expecting to perform. Because of some of the things, the way it went, and you got these cars driving past, and then big boards up at this. Like people was then annoyed with that, so then they just used that then to go at him and then blame him for it. Yeah. I mean, on the Canelo card now coming up, he's actually putting in bonuses. But he's not putting knockout bonuses. He's doing performance bonuses.
Yeah.
Now, how do you do performance bonuses? Because of what you just said about, I don't want to have people who are running around the ring. How's it going to be? Yeah. How's it going to be done on performance? A knockout, it's a knockout.
Yeah. I want to talk more about that because that's more about a current thing. I want to talk about that in the next episode, and that's more about the control that Turki Al-Sheikh is showing over boxing right now. But all three of you have all mentioned the fact is this sustainable? I'm going to let you into a couple of facts, right? The PIF is the Private Investment Fund, otherwise known as the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Saudi Arabia. When it started, for this project of GEA, it was at $700 billion, right? Today, it's $1.2 trillion. And it's rising because they're putting hell of a lot of resources into Saudi Vision 2030. My question is not, is this sustainable? The question for me is, when Project 2030 is realized, whether it be 2030 or 2032, what happens to Turkey al-Sheikh as head of GEA? Because the post will no longer exist. Hence, the reason for me, and certainly in my investigations, is why Turkey al-Sheikh, on a private level, to sustain the promotional value of boxing and to hold Riyadh or Saudi Arabia as not only the holy Mecca of the Muslim world, but as the entertainment Mecca of the world, and enable to Saudi Arabia to finally come away from energy and oil and gas. They will have a tourism sector set up to balance the books. Now, do you see now why Turkey al-Sheikh has bought BoxRec, has bought the Ring magazine, has bought 13% stake in DAZN, and that will continue to rise? There'll be other acquired businesses in boxing along the way. So, in conclusion to this program, gents, when we go into episode 3, we will talk about the control now that Turkey al-Sheikh needs to show to realize that ambition by 2030 and to have Saudi Arabia as the #1 boxing mecca in the world. Gentlemen, thank you for coming. Thank you for your input. Please come again next week for episode 3. Where we will be in conclusion of this series and talking about, and it will get spicy, and we will have to have some serious conversations. Twenty, thanks very much, mate. Brett, Boxing Man, and Ralph from Punch Out Boxing. We'll see you again next week. This program sponsored by EasyStories.com for all your local and nationwide needs. My name is Mr. Neutral. I'll see you next week for episode 3. Bye-bye.